Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to this month's edition of HETMA Presents The Road to 10K. Today, we are here to talk about HETMA's ongoing year-long Road to 10K theme that is involved in building ourselves, building our community, and in building the success of the hired AV vertical. And the theme for September is Life is a Highway. Positive repeat. Oh, sorry. You know what? I'm not even going to edit that out. I'm just going to leave it just like that because people should hear the truth that I can't read. Life is a highway. Build a system. Positive, repeatable habits generate long-term success. Define processes in your work or your team that improve outcomes and enhance collaboration. It's a really cool topic for the community to pick up for the month of September. And we are lucky to have a great panel of people to get that conversation kicked off for us. So let's go around the horn and I'll ask everybody to introduce yourself. So first off, let's say hi to Mr. Brian Shanks of Texas State University. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining. I don't want to out you on something, but I believe you were asked to join this show approximately 14 minutes ago. Is that true?
It was 11. So I'm Brian Shanks. I'm from Texas State University. I'm the Director of Learning Spaces, and Atkins Fleming is the Assistant Director of our department.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And I will say, when Atkins said, I'm not feeling well, I need to bow out, he literally was like, but I think I learned most of what I know about this topic from Brian. So he'd be a better guest for you anyway. So really appreciate your time and wisdom.
I'm not sure about that, but I think I learn more from my people than they learn from me, but I'll go with that.
I'm the same way, but I can't let them know that, as soon as they figure out, never mind.
Well, can you edit that part out then?
Yeah, we'll take that part out also. All right. Hey, and everybody's favorite person, Annie Foster of Washington Lee University and the HETMA Secretary. How are you today?
I am maintaining. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So we were mentioning you're still in build mode, getting ready for the opening of semester.
Yes. Yeah, we have a week to go. Countdown is on.
So it's doesn't always feel like the best time to step out and have a conversation about building systems. But man, building good habits and systems are the things that set us up for success for these crunch times. So I'm glad for you to be here and to share your wisdom with us. And then finally, everyone knows Mr. Steve Greenblatt of Control Concepts. Thank you for your time, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here and be amongst this great crowd. And I'm not from the higher ed vertical, but very much support the higher ed tech managers. And I am glad to be contributing to HETMA.
Absolutely. I guess, you may not have a .edu address, but if there's anyone in the industry, I think that is an honorary member of the higher ed community. I feel like you have to be on that list of people that understand us, work with us, and we consider one of our own. So
I appreciate that.
Plus, we may have given James King the ability. You know how like any knight can make a knight. He may have the ability. He may have already knighted you as an official higher ed person. So we'll have to check with him on that.
I'll have to talk to him. Thank you.
All right. Cool. Well, again, thank you everybody for being here. The theme for this month about building positive, repeatable habits. I'd like to start with this, which is I probably 2 years read a book called Atomic Habits and the one concept I took from it was habit stacking. And I'm a little bit of a scatterbrained person, but it's helped me in terms of putting things that need to happen together in a way that one habit leads to another so that things trigger and fall in line. And because sometimes I just feel like a child, and that's the only way I can actually function as an adult. But I'd throw this question out, whoever wants to go first, which is, when it comes to building habits, like even in our personal lives, is there anybody have a life hack, a tip, or something that they have done that they'd like to share?
So I guess I'll go ahead and start. So to me, building habits starts with self-discipline. And so kind of what I talk through with my people is the first step is to start building self-discipline, ways of building self-discipline. So we break it down into like easy things like, flossing takes literally a minute to floss. So that is a self-discipline that turns into a habit. And so if you can start with small things like that, another one is practicing the guitar. That's like one of mine. So something I enjoy. So I build these small disciplines that turn into habits. And then that way, when life gets crazy and busy, I have these alert systems in place. So if I start skipping playing the guitar, that's a cue to my brain to go, okay, you're falling off the path. Or if I stop flossing my teeth, or if I stop both of them, then it's like, hey, you've fallen off the path. You're not following, there's more going on also. So I'm probably skipping other things that I'm wanting to accomplish.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I love the idea that like how you've got a habit in there of playing guitar, right? Something that's self-care related, something that's, not just building a habit to do the things I have to do, but do the things that are important, even if they are for myself.
Yeah. So I call those my alerts. Those
Yeah.
are my alerts to tell myself that. And if those happen, then there's probably a lot of other things I'm not doing that I'm supposed to be doing.
Nice. Love that. I love that.
I can share a little bit as far as I think that for me, habits are really the structure that I need to be able to do things without thinking about them. And I know that this is the path I take, the steps that I take to do them, and what I believe creates a successful outcome. And similar to what Brian was mentioning, some of those things may be something that are must do's, and some of those things might be things that I'm trying to achieve. So, like healthy habits are must do's, but something like exercising is something that I'm trying to achieve. Those are some examples. But but building the habit, I think, is also something to discuss, because you want to, in order to create that habit, you have to do something on a regular basis and get that outcome. So if you're trying to wake up early, you have to force yourself to do it in the beginning, and then eventually it becomes something that is done regularly, because you go to bed earlier in order to wake up earlier, and you prepare yourself in order to achieve the outcome that you're looking for.
Follow up on that too, because you're right. The beginning of setting up a habit does have that feeling of just like, I have to force myself to do it. But when it's new, any way that you build accountability or some other way when you're first trying to set up a new habit?
I don't usually need stuff like that because of my makeup, but I can understand that as people do, you need a reward system. You need something that says, I'm doing this, and this is how I'm going to either benefit, or what I'm going to do for myself, or how I'm going, something that I'm going to mark that achievement. So, but I look at it just as discipline.
That's awesome. That was a pretty big flex too. I like that. And it's just like, well, I don't need that. I know that was good, but
but sometimes that works against me too. Or it could be too routine, and
exactly.
It's hard when you have to break something that you do regularly.
Yeah, when a couple summers ago, and my wife and daughter and I, we were set up a little bit of an exercise thing, and literally, like, because we put a chart up on the wall and you put like a colored dot, it was like, kindergarten. Did I do this thing today? Did I do this thing today? And it was like the public pride or the public shame if you didn't do it. Like that was maybe that says too much about me and not actually. All right, I won't worry about that. But yeah, like I think that's important. All right, Annie, give us how have you gone about building habits? And I would say, as HETMA Secretary, you have a lot of things in that realm that kind of you're responsible for some consistency for us. So what do you have to share with us?
Well, everybody on the board might say that I'm not very good at building habits, right? Because sometimes they fall off. You're making me think that in my personal life, I don't have any structure for like holding myself accountable with habits. And it's interesting that there is that difference between my personal life and my work life, because at work, I know that I need these like alerts like Brian is talking about. And things that hold me to it. And so at work, I build so many processes for myself and even for my team that we can all hold each other accountable. And it just makes it easy, but it makes me wonder, like, why am I not doing it for my personal life? I often feel like it's just a decision, right? Ultimately, I'm going to do this and I'm not gonna let myself down. And so I'm going to do it. And sometimes that decision is, you know what? It's not a priority for me anymore.
Does it ever feel like, going back to everybody, that there habits or things that we do that end up in that bucket of the way it's always been done, or, you know, a thing that's been around? Do we take enough time to think about maybe habits that aren't needed anymore as much as trying to set ones up that are needed?
Maybe only when I'm overwhelmed with the work and things
Yeah.
are falling apart. Like I'm falling behind on work. Then I'm like, do I really need to do this anymore?
Yeah.
It is an
There's lots
important
of
thing to
bad
think
habits
about.
we could discuss that we don't need to be doing anymore. I'm sorry, I jumped over you, Steve.
No, I was saying I think it's an important thing to bring up because I think habits can be to your detriment at some point when you're doing something because you've always done it or because you've gotten comfortable with it, doesn't mean that it actually is producing the outcome that you're looking for. Something for me, I struggle sometimes with being on time because I have so many steps that I take to be able to get out the door, let's say, and that's where you're having a habit working against you, perhaps.
Yeah, I was talking with out of our facilities department for years. They've done like an email newsletter. You know what I'm saying? And it's one of those, like, every once in a while, sometimes the work on the newsletter is surpassing some of the actual work that they would do, but it'd been done for so long, but didn't really know how much engagement it was having with people. And we were talking about other ways of trying to get information out to the community about it, but it was one of those things. It's just like, it's been so consistent for so long, it didn't even matter anymore if it was an imperative. So that was that, like, a habit that can become an imperative that doesn't exist. So sometimes, and I guess this goes in that the conversation of, when you oftentimes, when you want to start something new, you have to replace a new habit with, replace an old habit with a new habit, or make space for new things you'd like to set in routine by really evaluating other things in your life.
Or you develop the habit of allowing your people to question. And I think that's one of the big things that as leaders that we have to try and foster is getting our staff in that habit of asking us questions. That way you don't run into that we're doing it just because we've always done it. Especially the junior people, because they're usually the newer ones, and they're usually the ones saying, "Why are we doing this? This is dumb. This takes too long doing it this way."
I love that. So that talking about, teams and people and systems like that is something that I have done, and in the last couple of years had two managers come from outside the organization, and to that point, part of the instruction they got at the beginning was, don't take anything you see happening as a sacred cow, right? Don't keep your outside perspective. Take some time to see and learn, but we need a critical eye put on these things, and there's value in doing that. So I totally agree. And the other thing, and I'm curious if anybody else does this, they haven't let me put it yet into job descriptions, but I tell each of the people who, on my team, that part of their job is to tell me when I'm doing something wrong or overlooking something. And if they don't do it, like, that's what you'll get in trouble for, not the other way around. So is that, and like, do either of those things resonate to his point of, valuing an outside perspective to look at processes with a fresh eye, and how do we go about creating the safety for people to be able to question those things?
I like what you're saying, because I do the same when we bring somebody onto our team. This what you bring to us is a gift, that outside perspective, that somebody who's learning, and also I ask them to document what they're doing so that I can understand what they've been told and how they've learned what the processes that we're asking them to adopt, because it may not be very clear, or we may think we're telling somebody to do something and what they're hearing or understanding may be different, or they may find, as you said, the holes. But the ability and the space to speak up is certainly something that is important.
You guys are making me think about how building a habit can be iterative too, right? Like the initial goal of building that habit, it might change through the conversations with yourself or with your team, and you might have to change it. And I think it's really important to be flexible but reflective and kind of evaluating along the way. Like, is this working? Is it not working? Is this what I wanted? Is this benefiting everybody? And that new perspective is a huge boost to that whole process.
And to kind of jump on what Annie is saying is, we want to make sure that we're very careful of what habits we are wanting our people to build, so they don't come back and haunt us later. And I say this with kind of a tongue in cheek a little bit, but we used to have basically the habit of just getting things done. No matter what, we'd always get it done. And it became a part of our culture. And then when we started taking steps back and looking at what we were doing, we weren't doing things well, but we were getting them done. And Annie, you can relate to that last minute, get into the classrooms. All they got to do is they got to work. We got to make sure they work. Well, that became kind of everything then. And so trying to break that habit and that culture of just getting it done has been a process of almost a good 5 years. Just get people out of that mindset of, hey, we just got to get it done. No, we got to get it done right. So that iteration, we had to add that right on there.
I love that, how habits, mindset, culture kind of, there's a progression of how those three would interact with each other. And when you're trying to break it, you've got, there's almost, like you said, it takes a long time because those things are ingrained. There's no wedge place to get in and break that cycle. So yeah, where do you start in that? You start with the habits. Does the culture cause the habits, or do the habits cause the culture? And how do you engage on that?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and you have to have perseverance. Is the habit of perseverance.
Yeah.
And like I said, it took probably a good 5 years to break that habit, and it was really just reiterating day in and day out. How much time are we wasting going back and hitting a space 2 and 3 times? Excuse me, versus getting it done the first time, and being able to show our people how frustrating it is for them to go back and continue to fix things. And after a while doing that process, we started doing commissionings, our spaces. So we'd have our support team go in and commission a space after our integration team, because they're the ones that have to live with it once it's done. And that was kind of the big step that started pushing people, because now they have a score. It's gamified a bit, and we can compete who's got the best score and stuff like that. So that's kind of how we approached, which at the time was a good habit, just getting it done. But over time, you couldn't live with the department long term. Otherwise, it would sink the department basically.
I love it. That's a great thing to put in there, which is to say, we're in the habit of getting things done, but we're going to take it out of our hands to say whether it is done or not. We're going to give that to the support team, have them go in and grade it, you know what I'm saying, and change that perspective by putting it in their eyes and really put it to the test. That's a great takeaway for anybody that isn't doing that. It's not the integration team that says when it's done, it's the support team that says when it's done. I love it.
Yeah, right. The absence of help calls for the classroom.
And to Steve's point, the outcome, you've used the word outcome a number of times with these habits, right? And that ensure that they're aligned to the outcome that you want. So building if habits build mindset, mindset builds culture, ensure that, the conversation is about the outcome, not just the action that you're trying to repeat. See, we just solved the world's problems right there.
And add self-discipline builds habits, and now you've got a complete stairwell.
Yeah. But that's, what I'm saying? Like, that's
easy, right?
Yeah.
And I think a mission builds buy-in to do the habit.
Excellent.
Yeah. And that's the answer, right? So I love talking about this stuff that culture, designing, so getting people all rowing kind of in the same direction. So that vision, where we're going, and being able to say over and over and over, not just did we get it done well? Did we get it done well? Every time it comes up, we'll change that eye line for people. But yeah, when I've said, one of the things we talk about when you're trying to change something that's long ingrained is you have to treat it like turning the Titanic, like the person at the wheel has to turn the wheel and they have to hold it hard over, but the nose of the ship only turns a little bit at a time, So you've got to maintain that self-discipline to hold consistency and allow things to come through and see that as a win. So how do you, I'm going to take us in another direction, but before, how do leaders summon the patience to help teams change habits? Or how do you all do that?
I think I'm a patient person by nature. So it might be unfair for me to go first. But I think by reiterating the vision for the habit, by just thinking about it and embodying where we're going and reiterating it to everybody who's involved, I think that helps a lot. And having discussions about it, reevaluating, taking that feedback, like, is this still the direction that we want to go? And then when the group decides yes, then it feels like it's kind of refreshed. And then we talk about the details of where things aren't coming together and how we're going to fix them.
I would add to that, we have to first get the information out of our head. We know what we want, and we know how we want to have something done. Perhaps it's something that we've been doing for a long time. I can, go back to starting a company by myself. I all the habits and all the processes were things that I did, and I did them my way. First, you have to document how you've been doing them, and then you have to be able to accept the fact that people are individuals and everybody's going to have their own way of interpreting and in doing things. And you have to allow, as we discussed earlier, some of that wiggle room and be patient and be understanding. And then, iteration is what, we discussed earlier, making, allowing flexibility within those habits and those processes.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to add on to both of those. Get champions within your organizations to help support you, and build relationships. If I don't have relationships with my people, they're never going to buy into what I'm trying to move them to. Even if it's in their best interest, they're not going to buy into it. And so I tried to get a couple of champions, i.e. my 2 assistant directors. I had to get them on board first, but then once I got them on board, then I'm selling it. I'm selling it all the time. I'm selling that vision and that mission, and that way, if I start to get tired and worn out, because I lose interest quick. If I don't get movement quickly, I'm like, I see the next big thing that I'm already focusing on. Mm-hmm. So then they hold me accountable to go, hey, what about this? We never got there yet. And I'm like, you're right. Dang it.
Yeah, that's fun. I love the building champions of consistency. I'm the same way. I'm a in the Myers-Briggs. In fact, you can see a bunch of Myers-Briggs on that whiteboard back there, but an EN, right? So external intuition facing. So it's always what's the next thing, what's the new idea, and without the champions of consistency, I won't set the right example by my natural way of doing that. So it's getting your champions and building a team. And then I love the way you say sell it, which is you're not saying demand it. You're not saying do this or you're fired. You're saying getting people on board has a better stick-to-itiveness and selling it to people than just demanding it of people. So. Cool.
I feel like I'm really lucky in that when I was working as like a team of one, a department of one, I was able to build habits, and even like I would have to sell it to myself, right? Because sometimes you just don't want to do anything. And that internal conversation has helped me a lot now that I have a team, and having gone through like building those habits for the good of the university and for the good of myself even, now I know how to sell it more to the team and how to get that buy-in.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, sometimes I have to sell myself on the things, remember you said this was important and you know what the outcome is. Can you live it today too? It was, you lived it yesterday. Can you live it again today too and keep it up?
Well, how many things have you started and never finished?
Mm-hmm.
Because you didn't take the time, like Annie said, and sell it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Or you weren't convincing enough. That's a good point, Annie. I'm going to add that to my repertoire.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. All right. I'm going to, real quick. So it's kind of cool. We have sort of three, the three. Annie's at sort of like a smaller school. And we've talked about even, did a presentation on having to wear many hats at a place where you may not have big teams. Steve, a business owner, right? Non-public sector, building and seeing a different perspective. And then Texas State, a much larger university where you're dealing with larger teams and that sort of thing. So life is a highway, build a system. And I love build a system because, most of us would be like, well, we're AV people. We build systems all the time. That is literally what we're supposed to do. But the first definition of system is a set of things working together as parts of a mechanism or an interconnecting network. So talk about a better description of, integrated audiovisual systems made of multiple different things working together. There's a good definition for it there. But one of the things that we say a lot of the time is that, in the long run, technology is easy. People are difficult. People are messy, right? So when it comes to building systems, when it involves people, the processes and procedures that make our teams work, how do you think about building repeatable systems of people versus technology in kind of the different areas that you guys work? So, Brian, let's start with you. When it comes to, building a system at an institution like Texas State, how do you have to approach or think about the building or nurturing of human systems?
So I've made plenty of mistakes along the way, and that's really how I learn. I used to think that I came up with these great ideas, these processes, these new ways of doing business, and then I just passed it on down, and then I would go on to the next thing and let the team. So I've kind of stepped back, and my approach now is if I identify a problem or a new direction, then I take it to the team and I let them kind of start figuring out, hey, is this something we should do? Is this something, and how do we do it? Instead of me dictating, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it. And that builds a process quicker because then you get buy-in because they're solving the problem, right? They're finding a way to improve the process or what have you. And so getting in that kind of a habit of, and that has to go with the assistant directors too. I can't be passing things down, but then my person who's running the integration team is like, no, we're going to do it this way. So just kind of pushing that agenda down and solving problems at the lowest level so that there's complete buy-in to that solution and that process long term.
I love that. The person who brought me into higher ed from AV outside had a saying when I came into the team that was, not, it doesn't need to be my way, doesn't need to be your way, but it needs to be the agreed upon way. Trying to build that everybody had a voice in it. And then you also mentioned solving problems at the lowest level. Is there like an empowerment piece to doing this where, if people are bought in, can be trusted, so that system has stick-to-itiveness if at every level people are empowered to live their part of it?
Yeah, and it's really trust. Trust has to start somewhere, right? And you've got to trust your people that they're going to try to do the best thing they can. And if they make a mistake, it's not something you condemn them for. It's something that, because if you condemn, if Annie makes a mistake and I tell Annie, why'd you make that mistake? That was the worst thing you could have done. What is your problem? Then Annie's not going to take any risks. She's not going to trust me. But if I talk to Annie and go, okay, so Annie, what happened? Why did this mistake occur? And talk her through it, then she learns from it. I learned from it. And now she's not afraid to make mistakes, but she also knows what kind of questions now to ask when she's doing the process. So it's just really starting out with that trust and building that trust first. I have to trust my people first before they will trust me.
Yeah, totally. And I can also tell you that, I know that was an example, but Annie does not make mistakes, so you don't have to worry about
she just happened to be on the left of me, so
I
feel like I'm looking right at Annie.
I know, you set me up for that one. That was good. But no, that is a challenge, especially I think for new managers and new leaders where, all of a sudden you're responsible for other people, and you have that advice of start with trust and work with the things that come in there. And you almost talk about the Socratic method of helping people get through it by using questions rather than direction. That's very cool, but it can be nerve-wracking at times to go, no, I'm starting with trust and only going to intervene when we have to make change rather than micromanaging and ensuring some type of outcome. So
I always say micromanaging is easier than truly leading until it's not.
Yeah. Exactly. It looks easier for a little while, but then you hit a ceiling of what you can accomplish and you can't push past it. Totally. So then, Annie, when you're not out there making mistakes, how do you think about building systems and teams, especially, at an institution more like mine where things could be a little more retail, right? I know first name basis, the majority of people who work here. So oftentimes those systems have to be built across a lot of silos that people that maybe are not used to working together.
When I started here, there were not a ton of processes. And so I felt like I had the opportunity to kind of build the department as I saw. And I wanted everybody to kind of be responsible for the same stuff. That's what made it easy for me. Everybody was tasked with going and assisting in person and then also troubleshooting and coming up with solutions. And I think that process, it was interesting, right? It was an interesting experiment, but it did build accountability. It had accountability built into it because everybody's doing the same work and everybody's looking at what other people are doing. We're putting everything in tickets. And so there was trust inherent in that because when you're a team and you're trying to all have the same goal, you have the same goal. I forget what I was saying. But we built in trust and accountability at the same time. And it's kind of, I think those two things are very related. And that helped to reinforce the whole process.
Yeah, I agree. I like that because when you have teams or small teams of people, two things teams wear the same uniform, both so they can be identified on the field, but also, you know, you look the same, you're walking in lockstep, right? You put two people in a foxhole, you don't put people in a foxhole by themselves, so there's somebody at your side to do that. But back to that idea of trust is, if you have to show your work, it takes trust in the people around you to support you and not, you know, and not tear you down by the things that they see, but lift you up by the things that they see.
Right. We all have different strengths and different thought processes. And some people can identify certain types of things much faster than others. And so we talk things through a lot. If anybody's having trouble,
Talk it through and come to their aid.
yeah. Yep.
Nice. Cool. Well, then, Steve, you have to do all this in the real world, not the cushy cloud that those of us in higher ed get to live in, where, you know, being a business owner, everything happening is kind of put your money where your mouth is, in a way that I think is that entrepreneurial mindset is something that I think in higher ed we talk about a lot, but we don't necessarily have the same pressures, motivations, opportunities that you would. So how does this differ from your place in the industry versus our place in the industry?
What I'm hearing actually is a lot of similarities. And one of the comments I was going to make is that each of you have a department or part of an organization that is a mini business. And, you know, and part of that is understanding how what you do then impacts the outcome of the business. And I think one of the things that we try to teach within our organization, and it can be hard, is technically minded people may not also be business minded people. And we need to try to make sure we can either close that gap or provide that insight and education. And some people aren't going to get it, whereas others may come very easily. But it's something that we shouldn't assume, and that's something that we've learned a lot about. A couple of other comments is that, you know, sometimes we talk about those big picture and big idea thinking people, you know, visionaries, and you know, there's a time and a place to have those ideas and share them. But what I've come to learn is that sometimes those can really be disruptive, and I have to make sure that I as much as I consider myself a quiet person, I have to kind of keep my mouth shut and make sure that I know when I should be introducing or when is the right time, or even set the stage for, this is an idea. I'm not telling you we're going to do it. I just want to bounce something off of you, or, you know, we're brainstorming now, because a lot of people just go right into implementing, and that's not really what we're doing at the time. And it's something that I've learned actually and grown from in the past year. But but it's important to understand where you're at and where you're thinking versus the place and the seat that each of the people in your organization have. And a tool that we've adopted, and it may or may not be applicable within higher ed organizations, is something called EOS. It's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and you know, you take of it what works for you, but it's a great way of providing structure and addressing a lot of the things that we've discussed today. Yeah,
that's awesome. So two quick things. This is usually what I cut out of the show, is when I talk about things in between times. You know what I'm saying? Because that wouldn't help. But literally listening to an audiobook right now, and it's about advice for sole proprietors, right? Owners of a small business. There's some cool things in. They talk about whiplash, and that is, you know, the owner is doing, and then they have an idea, and the team wants to follow so much that all of a sudden everything changes, and they're inadvertently causing whiplash by having too many things out there. And like you said, you've got to be careful about how you couch certain things to keep people pointed the direction that they need to be pointed. And I think that can happen to any of us. And I also really appreciate the concept of talking about our teams as treating them as small businesses, and we do what is the customer, who are our customers, what are our key metrics, and the same things that that we would look at. Yeah, I appreciate that perspective, and I appreciate you sharing it with us.
Part of the EOS process is to review that on a weekly basis, and there's a very structured meeting plan that they have called the Level 10 meeting, and basically you're reviewing your goals, you're reviewing your metrics, as you said, and talking about these are the critical items that have come up this week.
Yeah, we'll talk about. There you go. There is a repeatable habit for building human systems, which is we've got an external framework, a thing that helps us do it, and then a regular thing we're going to do to pay attention to outcomes that is going to return it there. And yeah, whether we're busy or not, this is something that we are going to come back and do because it's a key piece of importance. So there's another great takeaway: is how often are we as a team having that sort of discussion? Where are we at in terms of our stated outcomes? Are we doing that once a year at performance review time, or only when our bosses ask for a report on it, or that sort of thing? So yeah, I love that. All right. Well, Steve, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate your time and effort. If people wanted to learn about you, Control Concepts, or any of the myriad network of podcasts that you have yourself, how would they go about doing that?
You can reach me best is on LinkedIn at Steve Greenblatt. My company's Control Concepts, controlconcepts.net. As you mentioned, we offer a lot of things to support programmers within the industry. One of them is a podcast I do with James King from the higher ed community called Ask the Programmer. Another one on aviation called The State of Control. And lastly, professional development is actually something I'm really big in. And you mentioned Myers-Briggs. We do a session at Infocom. We try to do it with Brittany DeCesare on my team called Understanding Personality Types and how they apply to the AV industry. So it's just something I'm passionate about.
Yeah, I would agree. I would, if you don't know Steve and Brittany, please, get to know them. I mean, next Infocom, find Steve and ask him for his autograph. You know what I'm saying? He loves to sign.
We'll just take a picture. How about that?
That is kind of the current thing. The AV selfie is that sort of thing. But yeah, thank you, Steve.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you having me. And I'm always glad to share insight and information and learn from others.
Good deal. All right. Annie, thank you for joining us today of Washington and Lee University and the HETMA Secretary. If people wanted to find you as they're going through their September month trying to think about building habits, how would they get in contact with you or learn more about what you do?
They can contact me via email, afoster@wlu.edu. I'm on LinkedIn as Ann Nee, Anknee, Foster. And I'm not really on anything else.
I definitely find Annie, and I cannot believe I haven't recognized that before. That is such an Annie Foster thing that you put a pun in your LinkedIn username, Annie. So that's awesome. Thank you for your time today. Appreciate it. And then Brian, thank you for jumping in at the last second. Really appreciate it. So if people wanted to get in contact with you, learn more, you mentioned, you're going to be presenting at ETC, which is coming up soon. Yes. Since this will come out in September, it's pretty timely on that front. or perhaps ask you questions so that we can get the real truth about Atkins and not just the stories he wants us to tell.
I charge for those. There's a cost for that.
There you go. Well, yeah, exactly. You could do all you want on that. Yeah. How would people get connected with you?
So probably email is my best, and it's just Brian Shanks at txstate.edu. I have a LinkedIn account, but I don't use it very much. I don't visit it very much. And takeaway is leadership is my passion. I want my goal is to try to be the best leader I can be. And Extreme Ownership, the book by Jocko Willink, my whole team will eventually have to go through that book. And we're unifying on a leadership strategy and language, and I'm hoping to see dividends in the future with that.
That's awesome. And I love the time and attention to doing that as a part of our work, right? It's professional development leads to great technical outcomes and better student experiences.
Well, when I have guys like Atkins and his associate Chris working for me, it gives me time to do all these other things.
That's cool. Well, thank you for all the time you let Atkins participate in also in the community, because we lean on him a ton, and he's been a good friend. So thank you. As always, my name is Ryan Gray. I'll steal Tim Albright. Do not look for me online or try and follow me in any way, because all you're basically going to find is pictures of either a pet or a sunset that I kind of like to post every once in a while, and then every once in a while some other things. But I appreciate everybody tuning into this episode of HETMA Presents. Please check Higher Ed AV Media. That's higheredav.com every day in September. We right now this calendar shows having a new piece of content up every weekday in the month of September. We have columns on audio, sound perspectives, AI insights with Andy Vogel from Ohio State. The AV Life is putting up their 300th episode ever. That's coming on the 1st of September. So please bookmark that page, take a look there, and see and hear the voices of the people in our community that are trying to share. And for today, that's all the time we have for HETMA Presents. Thank you for tuning in to HETMA Presents. This show is a production of Higher Ed AV Media. Please visit higheredav.com to learn more about this show and a host of others. The views expressed here are not necessarily those of our respective institutions, employers, or sponsors. We'll be back soon with another installment of HETMA Presents.